Hello and welcome back to the Librarian of the Rings. My name is Ben, I'm the Librarian, and today we're going to be talking about the Great Tales of Middle-earth box set. Welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about something pretty special, which is the Great Tales of Middle-earth, the box set. So there are 3 books in this, 3 of Tolkien's posthumously published writings, all edited, of course, by Christopher Tolkien, his son. And these are really wonderful books, and they do come together in this box set that you can get. So I want to talk to you a little bit about this as a set. I'm not doing a full review of each of these books here because I'll do those in separate videos. I've already done one for the Children of Hurin, which you can check out on the channel, and I will do reviews of the others in the future. But just know that these are all great books. What are the Great Tales? Well, of course, the Great Tales are referenced by Sam in The Lord of the Rings, talking about the tales that really matter.
It's like in the great stories, Mr. Frodo. The ones that really mattered.
And Tolkien himself called these 3 stories the Great Tales. They were stories that he thought could come out of the Silmarillion and stand on their own, basically be stories on their own that people could read. Now, he never achieved publishing them like that in his own life, but of course Christopher Tolkien, through tremendous effort, published so many of his father's writings for us to read, and that includes these Great Tales. So what are the 3 Great Tales? Well, I've already mentioned the Children of Hurin, which of course is a story from the Silmarillion, but tells the story of Turin Turambar and his sisters, probably the saddest thing that J.R.R. Tolkien ever wrote. And then there's Beren and Luthien, which was probably one of the stories that Tolkien loved the most and worked on for the longest. And then there is the Fall of Gondolin, another story that Tolkien just loved and was one of the first stories that he ever started writing. And so it spanned a huge history with him. That brings us to the next point about these stories. When you venture out beyond the works that Tolkien published in his lifetime, The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings specifically for Middle-earth, you start to tread into territory that becomes almost more scholarly, where there's different drafts and things that you need to read through and kind of assimilate together. And that's the way that 2 of these books are. So both Beren and Luthien and The Fall of Gondolin are really put together as histories of the story unfolding. So instead of being one continuous narrative, you read through the different versions of it that Tolkien wrote in his lifetime, and sometimes there are significant changes. If you've ever heard about Sauron being a cat, that's in Beren and Luthien. In the really old versions of the story, Sauron is a cat, and that's a pretty interesting thing. And so you read through the story several times in both of these books and get different versions of it throughout Tolkien's life. Kind of interesting, but it might not be what you're expecting when you just want to pick up a novel and read it. If you want to do that, The Children of Hurin is a much better read like that. So when Christopher put this together, and this was the first one of the Great Tales that he put together, he did it as one continuous narrative, partially because his father had said that it could be, and partially because it was in a state where it could be put together that way at the end of Tolkien's life. And it reads quite well. In fact, it's probably the next easiest thing to read after The Lord of the Rings. It's easier to read than the Silmarillion in a lot of ways. But that is just something to understand when you're looking at this box set. They come together because they are the Great Tales, but they aren't necessarily written in the same way at all. One of the things that I love about these books, though, is that they show Christopher Tolkien's great dedication to his father's work. When Beren and Luthien was published, and let me just check on the year here, it was published in 2017, and Christopher writes that he thinks it is his last book. He's finally putting together Beren and Luthien, this story that so many people love and that his father loved, and he thinks it's the last thing he will be able to do in his life because he is very old at that point. And then he decided to go ahead and do The Fall of Gondolin before he passed away. And so this is the very last thing that Christopher Tolkien published. So this one gets published the next year in 2018. Of course, we know that Christopher Tolkien will pass away just a couple of years later. And so it just shows his dedication up until the very end of his life for preserving his father's legacy and making to us, the readers and the fans, as much of the information that Tolkien had as possible, making that available to us. So all of these books are wonderful, but they read in different ways. Now, they are all illustrated by Alan Lee. If you're not familiar with Alan Lee's work on Middle-earth, you actually are, because he was one of the concept artists on the Lord of the Rings movies. And so, of course, these are just fabulous illustrations. And there are full plate illustrations like this one, but there are also illustrations in each chapter that are just pencil sketches. So there's actually a lot of pictures in here. So So you've got pencil sketches throughout, often at the beginning and end of chapters, throughout all 3 of these books. So with that in mind, is it worth it to buy these? Well, I just checked on Amazon right before recording this video, and the box set is going for about $50 right now. And that's not a bad deal at all for 3 hardcover books. Now, if you go out and buy the books individually, if you want all 3 of them, you'll probably end up spending about that much. They were all about $15 to $20 a piece when I was looking at the hardcovers. So it might be nice to get them all boxed together, all with the matching covers and everything. Is kind of a nice way to get them all together, but you might be able to get them cheaper if you just buy them individually. If you don't want all 3, then it's probably best for you to just buy them individually. If all you want is to read the story of Beren and Luthien, then probably just go ahead and buy that individually. If you just want to read it, you can actually get it a lot cheaper on Kindle, and sometimes there are sales on Kindle and that kind of thing, so you can get the story pretty cheap. All of these are published other places in various forms, but to be able to have them each as a standalone story is a different and unique experience. And I think really a good next step for Tolkien fans who have gone through and read The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings and even The Silmarillion, this is a good next step for you if you want more complete stories, the stories that Tolkien felt were really important, and of course the ones that Sam referenced as being the tales that really matter. Okay, so that's going to do it for this review of the box set of The Great Tales of Middle-earth. That includes the Children of Hurin, Beren and Luthien, and the Fall of Gondolin. If you have any questions about these, please go ahead and drop them down in the comments below. And if you've read them, let me know what you thought of them when you read them. That's going to be it for this video. Until next time, farewell wherever you fare. May your ears receive you at your journey's end.